On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
All right, everybody, I'm here with Kevin Varitek of the Texas Rangers organization. Kev, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
First, thanks for having me. So my name's Kevin Varitek, from Chicagoland area, and how I got to where I'm at now. Actually did my undergrad school down in Florida Gulf Coast University. It's in Fort Myers, Florida. And I got my undergrad in exercise science. And the cool part about that program was the senior year in the program, they built in an internship opportunity into it. They allowed their students to go wherever they wanted as for their internship, whether it was like a cardiac rehab center or private sector or with a team, and all the coursework was done online. So into that program, I was very fortunate to get the chance to intern with the Boston Red Sox down in Fort Myers. So I was there for the whole year. After the internship had ended and I graduated in May, I was offered a job to be a part of the GCL staff. And so I accepted it and went through and finished the season in the GCL. After that, the season ended and I was offered an opportunity to join the Texas Rangers organization, with first spot being in the Dominican Republic. So I worked there from October of 2019 all the way up until July of this year, so July 2021. In July, I got a call, came up to Arizona, and was there at the AZL or ACL, whatever you want to call it now, affiliate, and that's where I finished the season. And the plan going forward for next year is I will be at the low A affiliate, the Down East Wood Ducks, which is in Kinston, North Carolina.
Kev, it's cool to see you progressing through the ranks. And obviously we have the time together with the Red Sox. Like I said, off camera, it's cool to see you growing up and moving up in the field. And I want to get into life in the DR for you. Just anything that we can talk about, training facilities and even things like internet for you down there, anything that we can get into so that the listeners have an idea of how it works for those young kids down there, right? Like everybody just sees the end product of the major league player from the Dominican, but they don't know necessarily where they come from and how it all starts for them. So let's get into life in the DR for you and then for the players. And just kick us off, man.
Yeah, so I'll first start off by saying that, having an opportunity and an experience like that, I highly, highly suggest it for anyone that wants to be in professional baseball, that is looking to come in. Definitely, if you have an opportunity to take advantage of going down there, whether it's for a year, 2 years, whatever, I highly suggest doing it. Like you said, you get to be around the culture, seeing that a huge population of the game is Dominican. You get a better understanding of where your guys are coming from, as far as how they act, what the day-to-day is like, the home life, the family life. It also forces you to really hone in on your Spanish. For me, I took Spanish for 4 years in high school. And so going down there, I had a basic idea of all right, this is textbook Spanish. I know how to conjugate and certain verbs and stuff. But you get down there and it's all the textbook stuff is just gone. Just all the slang and stuff that they're saying. It's still pieces and bits get put together, same concept, but a lot of it's okay, gotta learn. But obviously understanding the culture and being around these guys, seeing where home is and what day to day is like, and then obviously working on the Spanish are all I would say, like huge aspects of helping you create your connection with your players. The way our complex is set up, I was very fortunate because I joined back in 2019. It was actually the first year that it was opened. So they had built a brand new complex. So I was very privileged to have the access to the quality of a weight room that they have there at the facility. So it's got like 6 Sorinex racks, some cable towers, a couple sets of dumbbells, med balls, a bunch of conditioning equipment, even like a green belt to do like speed work and conditioning on. So that's a big benefit because many of the guys down there have never had access really to a true training facility, let alone like quality instructional training. So having a chance to start with a clean slate with all those guys where they don't have any like bad habits or like training knowledge, you really are given an opportunity to create like a true quality foundational like base of training for all those guys. And also as like part of the coaching staff, like it allows you to create a culture from day one because they don't know any better. You can kind of set the tone from day one with how you create the environment. Like you obviously like want to make it a fun and learning environment for them, but also show that, hey, like there's benefit to this and there's times where we got to work. There's times where we can mess around, have fun, but allowing them to open up their eyes and see the big picture of it, that like you'll get quick buy-in of that. Other thing, like the complex was built to have like a working side, but then also like a life, like off field side. So in that life side where like it wasn't work, we had a cafeteria where they serve 3 meals every day. And all the like living arrangements were like apartment dorm style type of like bedrooms. So we would have our own bedrooms with bed and all the like furniture and stuff, but then we'd also have like an open lounge area where like the coaches can like congregate and shoot shit, talk shop, hang out, watch TV. But that was about like the main like bone structure of the complex.
So I have a couple notes here. So number one, the Spanish thing, I equate it to like the strength and conditioning, right? Like you learn from the textbooks, you get to your first place, and then you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
This is what I learned in the textbook. And the Spanish is the same, right? Like everybody's like, took Spanish in high school, I'll be good. I learned it then. And then you get there and you're like, what are they saying? It's totally different. And like for me, I took French in high school. So when I got to Pro Ball, I was like, I don't know what is going on. So like you said, the learning aspect of it really helps you connect with the players. And if you put the concentrated effort in, they will reciprocate and they will help you learn.
Yeah, and we got a good setup for the players. Obviously, not only they have access to all the same facilities and amenities that we do, but they also have online schooling, like remote. So they learn like basic math, they learn like basic day-to-day stuff to prepare them for going to the States. And one of the courses that they take is English. So they have a like a virtual English class. And so, like you said, like my Spanish isn't perfect. I'm sure your Spanish isn't perfect. But as long as we make the conscious effort and they see that we're trying to understand, like, okay, speak their language, they'll do the same thing with us as far as how comfortable they are with speaking English. And in turn, we end up helping each other with like, hey, like I didn't understand. They pull out a translator and they write it out and vice versa. So that's definitely another way, like I said, to build connection with players.
Yeah, providing vulnerability, right? Like showing them that, hey, I don't know Spanish, but I'm willing to learn. Like I know you don't know English well, but if you're willing to learn, like we can help each other. So that's cool. The second one I had is you talked about like creating a base and creating a culture for the players. Talk to me about that. Like what age are these guys that you're working with? Like what are you doing training wise? Is it like all the basics, squat, hinge, push, pull? Are you like still doing a little bit of advanced training? Like, talk to me about like the actual training of your guys.
So a lot of the stuff that we do, I would say, is based around the same ideas, like Zach Dakin's book, Movement Over Maxes. There are a lot of things that I liked from it, specifically like the pattern structure and the movement progressions that he had set up. So a lot of the stuff that we do early on, we call it like our foundational program. It's just learning the basics, learning how to push, how to pull, how to do a hinge, how to squat, how to stabilize and like keep your rib stack over your pelvis. And then same thing with like our sprint mechanics. Can you learn like basic like a march, like wall series, then obviously like progress into different skip variations and rudiments and stuff. But a lot of the stuff that we do early on isn't crazy loaded. They will have some load. We had it set up into our program where they would have to hit certain benchmarks. Obviously, technique is number one priority, but making sure that some guys do need to have some type of load or stimulus to be able to feel like what the pattern is like. Like not everyone can do a PVC hinge or like a overhead squat. And so I think that was where the best part was like, yeah, like you're not going to do all the fancy like contrast and west side type training with these guys, because to answer your other question, like a lot of these guys are high school age kids. You're looking at 17, 18-year-old kids that have no training experience. But like I said, like some guys need load. And so to get creative with, okay, like I have my pillar exercise, whether it's like barbell front squat, for example, and working backwards and having different routes of progression or different, like you can think of like different levels, having different exercises at each level to say like, okay, this one might not work for this guy, but this one will. And then you test them on it. Okay, cool. That's his exercise, progress him to the next level. And then you keep going all the way up until you hit your pinnacle.
Along the way, they're still playing games and everything too, right? Like they have the practice, they have the game. So you kind of have to balance that as well.
Yeah. So during the year, yeah, they definitely play during the summer. So you're looking at from July until September, October. So that's like their like summer league season. So that's where they'll be playing a bulk of games. They do have a Dominican spring training / extended as well. So they'll be playing games. And then there's also Dominican instructs where sometimes they play games. So if it feels like that there's games nonstop, but especially like these last, like the 2020 year, obviously with COVID, there was no games. So it was a lot of practice. But it was also a good opportunity for these guys to hone in on their skills, like individual work, not only like on the baseball field, but in the weight room as well. So it is a challenge to have to try and balance stuff out. But it's no different than being in a stateside affiliate with putting in the weight room together with all the games.
Are you writing the programs down there? Like, what does the staff look like? Is it just you? Do you have a couple other strength coaches with you? Like, what does that look like?
So when I was down there, it was myself and I had a partner. His name's Danny Mendoza. Together, we spearheaded the Dominican complex. We had, because our org feeds 2 teams into the DSL, so we had anywhere from, at one point we had almost 100 guys in the complex at once. But after that, as we start getting closer to the season, it tailors down into 2 teams. So, but after I left, Danny's still down there, and another coach down there is Andrew Cardenas. He's down there right now. So those guys are running shop.
So you mentioned like spring training, actual games, the Dominican instructs. Like, were you down there year round? Was it like, obviously you're from the States, so like, did you ever get to go home, or were you living down there like full time?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for some people, and the opportunity to go down there. I'm very flexible. I'm not rooted home anywhere. I don't have a family yet. I am engaged, so I do have to keep her in mind. But I had an opportunity to have the flexibility to be able to go down there. I know it might be difficult for others that have 2, 3 kids or whatnot. But as far as the schedule, so Instructs goes during the fall. So it'll go from about like October to December. And then you'll get some time off for the holidays for like Christmas and New Year's. But during Instructs, you'll get a week off for Thanksgiving, some time off for Thanksgiving. So I was able to come home for Thanksgiving, and then Christmas and New Year. And then January 2020, went back down there like second week of January and was there for our January camp. That's what it's called. So I was there January and February, March, came up to Arizona for spring training, and that's when everything got banged. But then after that, I was at home all the way until September. And September 2020, we had about a dozen guys able to get into the complex. So they wanted some staff down there. So I was down there September, October, November, December. Again, went home for the holidays, came back in January, and then pretty much ran it back again. So January, February, March, April, came up for spring training.
The versatility thing is key for me. I think especially like when you're younger in the field, and especially in this game, right? Like my wife and I just moved again yesterday, right? It's like every year we move somewhere else. One of my friends like, you guys are professional movers. Like, well, we don't have a family. We are still young. Like we still have the ability to move around, and like I'm not ready to settle down and like have kids and be in a set spot. Like you know what I mean? Like I think for you that helps you be with your marketability to teams and to jobs, and it's probably something that young coaches listening can like, hey you got to be able to move on the fly. Like if we call, like even last year for us, like, hey, we're going to call you for summer camp. We don't know when it's going to start, but it's going to start. And I think they called me on Friday and they're like, hey, can you be here by Monday? And I was like, I could be here. I could be there tomorrow. I could be like, what do you need? Just tell me, like, tell me when to book my flight and I'll be there. So I think for young listeners, that's a really good talking point here, is just being able to be on the move whenever somebody needs it.
Yeah. And even for myself, like take out those handful of months because of the quarantine and everything. So from October 2019, work a couple months, then obviously come home, go back down there again in the fall of 2020. And then all of a sudden I'm up in July in Arizona. And then now I'm going out to Down East next year. So literally within like a true year, maybe year and a half of coaching, I'll be at 3 different levels. And so if I didn't have that flexibility, if I was rooted down and had kids I had to worry about and a wife and everything, I might not be able to have those same opportunities. So I definitely agree with what you pointed out.
And again, that's not to say that you shouldn't have a family or you shouldn't eventually root yourself somewhere. It's just when you're young in the field and you're trying to solidify your position and show your marketability, like having that flexibility really is key. Especially here, because like you said, you can be, 1 year you're in A ball and you're on the East Coast, and next year you're in AA and they're on the West Coast, and then they want you to go down to the Dominican for Dominican instructs. Like this game pulls you all over. I've been all over the country. I was living in Arizona. Our spring training was in Florida. I was up north for our affiliates. My family's in New York. So like I had this route of traveling the country of like, I'd drive to Florida and then I'd drive up north. And then when the season was over, I'd drive to New York to see my family. And then I'd drive back to Arizona. Like it's all part of the craziness that is this job, but it's real, right? Like it's not something that you don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. Like it's part of this game for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like you loved it down there, dude.
Oh yeah. I think a combination of the staff that we had down there, it was a really young staff, all around my age. We're all brand new into pro ball. So this is our say like first experience of like, okay, like this is a little different. Honestly, like for me, that was the first time I actually ever left outside the States. I'd never been out the country before. And so that whole experience of, all right, I'm going to a different country where they don't speak English most of the time. And it was definitely a culture shock, but I enjoyed my time down there as crazy as it was. And um, the amount of ups and downs that I went through. End of the day, I would do it again. Like if I had to go back in time and had the same decision I had to make, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Man, it's one of the things that it's been said a lot on this podcast by people who have spent time down there, and I've never been down and I want to go so bad. It's just if you have the chance to go and experience it, like every single time you should take that experience. Everybody I've ever talked to in this game is like, if you get a chance to go to the DR, you got to go, dude.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said in the beginning of this, like if a coach has an opportunity to go down, whether it's you've been in the game for 10 plus years and you've never been, or you're trying to get your foot in the door, like the Dominican is a perfect opportunity to get you some experience, and it's going to add tools to your belt that are going to help you progress and jumpstart in your career. Like being able to speak Spanish. Now you can address a whole room. You can talk to the English guys, you can talk to the Spanish guys. Or I think like the hardest challenge for me when I was down there was trying to run a speed session in Spanish, like to try and talk through like feels and cueing and mechanic stuff in Spanish. But that's like the hardest challenge I'm ever going to have as a coach. And so if I can feel confident and comfortable with doing that, like there's no challenge really that's going to have me shaken and worried about it.
Yeah, that's so awesome, man. That's so awesome. And then, of course, the beautiful weather, the beaches, the food, right? Like, I love Latin food. And every time we have it in the clubhouse or whatever, guys are like, you eat that? Really? I'm like, oh, every day I could eat this. Crush.
Yeah, that was in our cafeteria. Of course, like there's some nights where they had like American nights where you'd have like chicken wings or pizza or burgers or something. But majority of the time it was either like Dominican cuisine or even like Venezuelan cuisine. And so being able to see and experience like the food of different countries and stuff, it's not the same as like going to McDonald's or having a steak or chicken breast or something like that. Like to have like mashed plantain, like I never thought that. I was like what is that? And then all of a sudden you eat it and it's like, all right, yeah, this is pretty good. So
that's awesome, man. I'm glad you got to experience it, and I'm glad it's helping your coaching career. And I'm also glad that you're going to experience affiliate life next year. That's really cool for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for it. I know there's some different challenges that come with it, and as compared to the complex life, but obviously like being in with the Red Sox for a year, and then the combination of the Dominican complex and Arizona complex, I think it was a good opportunity to escape complex ball for a little bit and to see what the real grind is like.
It's time to spread those wings, man.
I'm ready for the bus trips. So
what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
When I saw this question, I don't think there's anything like off the wall that I like would stand on a mountain and scream down for that's like over people's heads. I will say that of my coaching philosophy, movement quality over weight is definitely number one. I think it, like I said, I referenced Zach's book earlier, Movement Over Maxes. I truly coach by that type of statement. Our goal as strength and conditioning coaches is obviously to help in ways of player development. And the best way to do that is to keep a guy healthy. And so if we can keep a guy healthy, he'll be able to practice and be on the field and develop those skills. And then in turn, because he's able to develop, now he's able to go perform and have success. And so if the guy has issues with even just getting on the field to begin with, if that's stuff that can be aided in the weight room. helping a guy clean up some movement mechanics or teach him how to move correctly to help. Like, for example, like if a guy has poor like core stability or doesn't understand what like trunk stacking is, or his scap isn't moving correctly, like that's stuff that can be worked on in the weight room that can help take him out of the training room and keep him on the field. So like I said, like he gets more reps, and because he gets more reps, he gets better and he can go perform. And then I listened to this recent episode with John Perry, and he referenced the microdosing over high volume, and I would second that big time. As crazy as the schedule is, being able to, it's a lot easier to fit into a schedule of 15, 20-minute block versus like an hour block. And so if I'm able to get more sessions during the week of 15 minutes, not only is it shorter time, but I can get better quality because I'm not going to lose the guy's attention halfway through the session. So it's just, hey, come in here, 10, 15 minutes of this and we're good to go. All right, cool. We hit that 5-6 times during the week versus trying to find time of an hour long or a half hour long speed session. Like guys might be burnt out a little bit, or they'll check out and you'll lose focus and effort. And so you're not really going to gain anything after that. But then also from a aspect of in season, obviously like we talked about on this podcast before, it's like we're stress managers, especially in season, like regardless of on field, off field, like stress is stress. And so being able to understand like when it's time to like pull back, it's a lot easier to plan in microdosing, like little bits and pieces versus having to throw huge loads of volume on a guy, like right after his girlfriend broke up with him. Like probably not a good time to do that.
So I have points for both of these. So the first one, you talk about, keeping guys healthy is an ultimate goal for us, right? And like the amount of times I've heard stories and even seen it myself, right, is like a guy is like, I'm not a weight room guy. I'm not going to lift weights. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's your choice, your career, whatever. But then they'll come to you randomly, be like, dude, my hip doesn't feel great. Can you show me some stuff? And then like you show him, and then he's like, oh, I feel better. And then they go out, they play whatever. And then the next day they're like, hey, can we do that hip stuff again? Like, it makes me feel pretty good. And like, I think that's just another way to get buy-in for you, right? As a coach, is like, yes, we can all coach the big weights. We're all excited when a guy, pounds out a big squat or a deadlift or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
there are guys that are in the game that just, they don't want to lift, right? We play every day and like, they don't want to feel sore. They don't want to feel tired, whatever it is, whatever the reason is, but they'll come to you. And if you can show them some quality movement stuff that helps them feel better, they'll keep coming back to you. And then I think eventually, hey, let's take these movements and let's load them a little bit and let's get you doing this. And then that's how you create that relationship with that player.
Yeah. And I experienced that firsthand, like being down in the Dominican a handful of times. We even had like a couple of affiliate guys that were down there training during January camp. And a guy was always talking about, oh, like my hamstrings are always tight, like my low back's always tight. And it's like, hey, like come with me in the morning. We'll do this for a couple of days and we'll see how it goes. It's like, all right, cool. He comes back the next morning, take him through some stuff. And it's like, hey, like go ahead and touch your toes. And like he immediately, like after he touched his toes, he looks up and you just see like how big his eyes got. And he was just like, what did you just do? He's like, I haven't been able to do it. Like my back feels great now. Like, it's like, all right, cool. Like, this makes you feel good. Now keep doing it. And it's same thing too with like, we had another guy who was at first like really frustrating to work with. Like, I'll admit it, like the personality was, he didn't want to be in the weight room, young kid. So it's one of those like, all right, hey, like we just got to continue to be around him, continue to teach him like, hey, there's benefit to this. And one day he throws a side and it didn't go so hot. And so he came to myself and one of the pitching coaches after, and he's just like, he said it in Spanish, but he was just like, I want your guys' help. And it's like, okay, let's go. And now fast forward to the kid, like I have to kick him out of the weight room. Like he wants to be in the weight room all the time. It's like, that's great. Like that's great that your mindset changed and you saw benefit in this now. And it's okay, cool. But like pump the brakes just a little bit.
Yeah, I think finding a way to connect it to, how they feel on the field and hopefully how they perform. But I think usually if you feel better when you're on the field, like you have a better chance to perform, right? Like we're not going to guarantee they're going to perform better. But I think there's other ways to win that player over than just, hey, come in here, load this squat up. If you squat heavier, you will hit the ball farther. Like, no, sometimes like they don't need that. They just need you to help them feel better first and foremost. And sometimes it is heavy squatting, right? Like, but most of the time it's not. So the other one for me is you talk about microdosing over high volume. And you'll see this, especially when you go to the affiliate, is like, once you get into the day-to-day, the schedule is pretty similar every day, right? Like, so you kind of have your time slots and like, hey, every day I'm going to have a 15 to 20 minute time slot. So like in our setting, it almost works better to just do a little bit every day instead of trying to, force guys, hey, like instead of our normal 20-minute window, I need a 60-minute window twice a week. Like, no, because then that throws off the whole baseball schedule, right? Like this is the time you get. It's going to be pretty similar every day from, 2 to 2:30, you're going to have this guy in the weight room. Okay, I can work with that. And then, like I said, as you get into the everyday schedule, the ebbs and the flows of the game, like you'll know, okay, I can do this, and then you might have to cut down, or you can say, oh, I actually have an extra 5 minutes. Let's start adding this. Let's start adding that. But I agree, like I think the small doses over time, especially in this setting, because we play every day, we practice every day, like I think it just works out a lot better.
Yeah, I think there's a time and place to kind of push the gas pedal and get some high volume in, but seeing that our season goes from February until October, like that's a large portion of the year. Like we can't be doing any type of like German volume training or anything crazy like that with these guys in season.
And I think a lot of things in baseball, right? Like you find out that you don't need a lot of volume, right? Like you might hit 3 sets of 3 and that might be it. But over time, you're going to see like, especially because a lot of guys are not like as proficient in the weight room as you think. It's getting a lot better, right? Like guys are putting a lot more focus in. But I think even like kids coming from the DR, high school kids, like I think if you just give them a little bit, eventually they start, getting better anyways. Like you might see PRs at the end and you might be like, damn, we didn't really even do much. Like I think the amount of volume that you need is actually a lot smaller than what people tend to think.
Yeah. And I've always been one, like in the programs that I was a part of down in the DR, we never really did a large amount of volume. Not only like cumulative, but even like in set volume. We always kept the reps to about like 4 or 5, even if it was like a patterning exercise, just because one, like we want the focus of attention there. We don't want to do like 1 by 20. Like by the 8th rep, the kid will either like lose count or he'll be checked out and doing something else and the form will go down. So for me, like doing 3 or 4 sets of 4 or 5 is a lot better than doing 1 by 20. In the end, like we're still going to get the same goal. Like we want some sort of volume, but to make the time that we're doing that, like during the set, more efficient and focus more on the technique, that's where I see the benefit of that.
Yeah, I think especially with those young kids, right? Like you want the quality to be as high as you can, but you also know that, like you said, the attention, the focus kind of starts drifting. Like, oh, how many, was that 9, 7, 12? Like, no, that was only 4. What? Yeah. Like, oh, okay. And then, so I agree with you. I think especially like you're going to see at the affiliate life, like that small window every day is available to you. You just have to make the most of that window.
Okay.
What makes a strength and conditioning coach successful in your mind? Maybe in professional baseball settings specifically, and then also just in general.
I mean, I'll just hit on it in general. I think it goes back to when I was with Boston, what Mike Roos told me one day. And he hit me with the old players don't care what you know until they know you care. So in hearing that and obviously looking back on that moment now, definitely like communication with guys, not only like with your players, but with your staff as well as like being personable with them. Like, yeah, like these guys are professional baseball players, but they're just like normal people, just like us. And that it's just that their job is cooler. So they're still people. And so to get to know your people on a personal level, it definitely makes a difference. Like I said, when it comes to building connections and buy-in. And I remember he had talked about a story of a player that he was working with on a major league level was struggling offensively, potentially could be getting released. And one day he went up to Mike, he's like, hey, like, what can we do? And they got a plan together, they worked together, and all of a sudden he started having success, and he's still playing. He's still an active player. And that's where it kind of takes into like our job like in the field. Like we're always the ones putting the players first, or we should be the ones putting the players first. Like our job is, I didn't become a strength and conditioning coach to become famous. Like I wanted to be able to help players. And like going through athletics in like high school when I was a kid, like I didn't have access to the type of facilities or coaching that some schools do now. And so being able to provide that opportunity to some young athletes, like for example, like when I was down in the Dominican, like that's opening more doors for them. Not only like, okay, physical development, but now you're going to be stronger, faster, jump higher, you'll be healthier. The longevity of your career is going to increase. So now you have a better opportunity of making it to the show, help your family and everything like that. End of the day, like the players always deserve the credit. Like I'll never take credit for a kid. But if for some reason like something bad happens, like I am the one that's going to take that. Like that's my fault. Like if a guy like tweaks something or what, like that's not the player's fault. Even if he didn't warm up correctly, like that's not the player's fault. That's my fault. Like I didn't take ownership and make sure he should have been doing what he should have been doing and whatnot. But if a guy hits a PR or a guy throws 100 or something like I didn't lift the weight. The kid lifted the weight. He's the one that put in the work.
Yeah, I agree with you, dude. I really do. And I love what you said about like we should be the ones putting the players first, right? Like it's sometimes it's like a thankless job, right? Like you're just expected to do that, but like that's why we got in. Like for us, like I don't need anybody to say thanks to me. Like I'm in the same boat you are, right? Like I was a kid, I played sports, like I didn't really have ton of access to like this type of training, right? Like I was just straight up bodybuilding, chest on Monday, legs on never, back on, you know what I mean? Like that's how it was, right? Like, and so for me, I knew there was something missing, and it was like, when I got into strength and conditioning, it was like, all I want to do is just help players. Like, that's so cool. Like, I don't need you to say thanks. Like I didn't, like you said, I didn't do anything, but I'm here to help you if you need it. Right. So for me, I agree 100%. Like, we should be the ones putting the players first. We shouldn't be doing this to try to get famous. Like being in the big leagues this year, right? Like nobody cares who I am, right? Like, you know, in the outside world, because, you know, we have the big league guys on the field. And for me, that's fine. Like I like it that way. I think as strength coaches, like being in the background and being in the shadows is like almost that cool, like, yeah, they're doing their thing. We're helping as best we can, but don't ask me who I am. Like, at least in my mind, right? Like,
no, I agree.
So what advice do you have for others in the field? Maybe young coaches looking to get in, or just even older coaches who are just trying to stay sharp. Like, what do you got for us?
Say making as many connections with other coaches, I'd say was probably a big point that I learned early on. And I don't mean it as just like strength and conditioning coaches. Like obviously, like we can always talk shop and talk different programming and different exercises and stuff, like bounce ideas off each other. But if you're working in a sport, I think you need to build connections with the sport coaches as well. Understanding like to pick their brain and learn different aspects of the game as far as even like mechanics or like hitting, throwing, or different techniques or mindset, because any way that we're able to take like what they're trying to do on the field, and if even we can improve upon it by 1% in the weight room, like that's a win. And so the only way we're going to know what stuff we need to be doing is to have that connection with the sport and like on-field coaches for us, like in baseball, having an understanding of like the mechanics, the technique, and what goes into it, and then us being the biomechanists and the meatheads, knowing movement, we're able to cater programs that are going to be better optimized for what they're specifically trying to do on the field. It's not just a clean cut of bench, squat, deadlift. All right, cool. Go ahead, throw on the mound. If I can make some exercises or movements or modify some stuff that's going to be putting the guy into a better position to produce better force or whatever have you, that's going to be better for him and his development. And then in turn, it's going to help his performance on the field. Not saying that like bench, squat, and deadlift, like to have that in the program, like is a bad thing. Like obviously you need it, but if there's ways that we can get a little bit more specific with stuff, then definitely take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things for me this year is like getting to pick our assistant hitting coach's brain, getting to pick our pitching coach's brain. And just, I think one of the mistakes that I made early in my career is like when I was in grad school, I was in charge of baseball, softball, right? And so like I put this program together, I laid out the whole template, I made this big packet, and like I went to my meeting with the coaches, and one of the coaches is like, yeah, we don't lift in season. And it like threw my whole plan out. And it was like, I went to the other coach and they're like, is this going to help us on the field? I was like, I think so. Yes. And they're like, okay, do it. So like, I think looking back, like I was the one pushing my agenda on them without even asking them what they wanted out of their players. Right. And so now it's like, I collaborate with our hitting coach, our pitching coach. I'm like, what about this guy? How can he get better? Oh, if he could get into his backside glute more, if he could have more hip IR, if he could do this or that, then you can formulate a plan, right? Because then you're on the same page. Like if we're doing something as strength coaches, and I use like football as an example, right? Like you build up your players to be like big, strong power lifter types, but you run like a speed option offense, like you're doing the exact opposite of what the coach wants. Or like you're trying to train your players to be these super fast athletes, but you're a slow, like ground and pound team or whatever, you know what I mean? Like if your programming doesn't align with the goals of your sport coaches, like you're pulling the rope in opposite directions, and then you're putting the athlete in the middle of that, and they're not getting better either way because they're training one way with the sport coaches and they're training with you, you know, the opposite way. And like, so I think if we could get everybody on the same page, collaborate, and then I think that ultimately is what serves the athlete best, right? Like if I'm pulling the same rope as the hitting coach in terms of trying to get a guy better, then ultimately like that guy's going to get better, right?
Yeah, no, that's what player development should be. We're all here to help these guys develop and become better ball players, make it to the show. Yes, there's different aspects of it. You take a position player, like he's got to be able to hit, he's got to be able to play defense, he's got to be able to run. There's multiple different assets of value that all of us provide as coaches. Just because I'm not a hitting coach or a pitching coach doesn't mean I can't provide value to a guy. And so I think all of us being on the same team as far as like player development as a whole, that, like you said, is going to help cater towards the player. Like that's what our goal is, to help the players make it to the big leagues. That's player development. But I think also with making those connections with the on-field coaches or sport coaches, if you do run into a situation where it's like the coach might not have as much buy-in on the weight room, if he's just like, nah, I don't believe in the weight room, like guys are going to get too big, too muscly, they're not going to be able to run or throw or anything, like that's another opportunity to build buy-in with a coach. Say like, hey, like, what are you working on with the guy? Oh, we're trying to work to his first step to get to his backhand, but he doesn't have it doesn't look like he can get down and get to the ball. It's like, okay, well, let's check it out. And you go look and you see like, all right, movement assessment shows he had some like poor ankle mobility, do some stuff for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden coach comes in, like he can hit that backhand now. Like he can get to that. It's all right, cool. So just like having that eye-opening moment with a player, it's the same thing with the coaches, but it just takes time to build that connection.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you say it as like player development, the goal is to get them to the big leagues, right? And like being in the minor leagues, that's how it was for me too. And like now being in the big leagues, it's like, okay, so you got the goal, right, of getting to the big leagues, but that doesn't mean you have to stop getting better. Like I think as a kid, I always thought like, oh, big leaguers are the best of the best. Like coaches are there to kind of just, help maintain, quote unquote, maintain, like don't get them hurt, like just let them play, like they'll figure it out. But the reality is a lot of those guys, everybody wants to get better. Even the best of the best want to get better. Like they're obsessed with getting better and just having even better results, even in the big leagues. So like in player development in the minor leagues, the goal is to get to the big leagues. But once you get to the big leagues, you don't stop progressing, right? And like those conversations are very relevant. They're very important between the coaches and the, the strength coaches and the sport coaches. And it's not like the strength coaches aren't doing anything. It's like, we need you guys to help this guy. Like, especially the way the game's, moving now and like progressively, it's the coaches are getting younger, and a lot of the baseball coaches specifically for us, but sport coaches in general, right, are more well-versed in exercise science. Well, we need to be more well-versed in quote unquote baseball science or baseball movement or whatever. Right. And like, so for me, that's been, like I said, that's been an awesome part of this season, is just talking with our coaches about different things and learning their philosophies and what they're trying to teach, and what their language is to players, and just trying to figure out ways to sprinkle that into our program. And that's not to say, like you said, squat, bench, deadlift are all still there. Everybody can get faster, everybody can get stronger, but it's those little things that, maybe it's an individualized prep routine for a guy, or even just like you said, the communication, the language that you use, if that's the same. Like, I think those are the things that take it that extra step further, that take you from being just a good strength coach who's holding that place to like being a great strength coach.
Yeah, definitely.
So where are you going for continuing ed, my friend? Are you reading any books, attending seminars, listening to podcasts? Where do you go to keep your sword sharp?
So I like looking at different courses, like online or like seminars. So I recently did the sports science one, NSCA put together. I also bought a bioenergetics course from Evan Pycon. It was something that one of those, I have been following him on social media for a minute and dug into a little bit of what he's about and what he talks about, and saw an opportunity to dive in and learn a little bit more. So I went ahead and bought it. So I'll be getting into that shortly. Another EdU, I think Max Shamarzo does a really good job of breaking down complex topics into simplified details and good to understand. So as a young strength coach, like I think you've seen what's it called, the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like you think you know everything and then you realize you don't know nothing. And I definitely experienced that when I was in the internship, and I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit. Yeah, he does a really good job breaking down like the basics and talking about like details and all aspects of like VBT, programming, speed, power, strength, all that stuff. But I definitely listen to podcasts. Obviously, I listen to your podcast. Also listen to Upside Strength, Jacked Athlete, which is Jake Tura's podcast, and Just Fly Performance. I'd say those are probably the four that are constantly on my Spotify.
I'm just getting into Jake Tura's stuff now, and I feel like I've been missing out. He's got some really good stuff. So I'll have to check out that podcast, because I'm always looking, I kind of have my core ones, but if there's people that I'm like really interested in, I'll listen to all of their stuff. Max Shamarzo, I have like literally every one of his tweets is just favorited. I'm like, God, this guy is so relatable for me.
No, with Jake, it was one of those like, I had some tendon stuff like bothering me, and obviously was like looking at different routes or avenues that could potentially help myself, and came across Jake's stuff, and it's like, all right, I'll try it, and felt great. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, this guy has earned my buy-in. So just listen to his podcast, and he touches on a lot of good stuff, and he has a good amount of guests coming on. So definitely check him out.
Yeah, I have to, man. His stuff is good. I've been doing some of his his jump protocol stuff and some of the other things that he's got out. So I'll definitely listen to that one. So thank you for that. Hey, we've been at it for a while, man. And I usually finish these with a lightning round. So if you have time, it's, 4 questions, as long as they're as short as answers. And then I'll get you out of here, I promise. Game?
Let's do it.
All right. So first one, who is your biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning?
So when I saw this question, I couldn't think of just one name. Obviously, my first experience in the field was when I was around all you guys with Boston. So having that first exposure to being in the field, being able to take bits and pieces from all you guys, including yourself and Ricky and Joe and Colin and Edgar and Kirby and Ben. I think all you guys made an impact in me or on me early on, and I was able to take bits and pieces from you guys and help to develop into who I am now as a coach. But if I had to single out one guy, it would have to be Kirby Retzer. He took me as his mentee when I was there doing my internship, and then when I took the job to finish out the year there, he had helped me with so much. And like I said, when it came to the part of, well, when you're young and you think you know everything, and it's like, all right, cool. But he would challenge me on so much stuff, and it wasn't just to like be a jerk about it. It was to really like help me get a better understanding of the why, but not only that, but like the why behind the why. So it'd be one of those, like, he would ask me a question, I give him an answer, he'd be like, well, why? It's like, well, I just told you why. It's like, no, like, why? And so it like, or like I would ask him a question and he wouldn't give me an answer. He'd be like, just research it, come back to me. And so like, it was frustrating, but looking back on it now, like, it helped me so much with building the I don't know what to call it, like the process now of like looking out for information and research and having a filter and being able to look at it and question it and be like, hey, is this something I can apply into my situation? Yes, no, how would I do it? Why would I do it? And so he definitely is probably my biggest influence.
I'm glad the internship worked out well for you and we didn't scare you away.
No, you guys are awesome. You guys are awesome.
One piece of equipment to train with, what would it be?
Probably a barbell. If I actually ever decide to use it.
Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Professionally, I'd say over the last like year and a half, 2 years of where I've gotten to now. I think being able to go now, it's my first year out at affiliate this upcoming season. I'm definitely excited and ready for the new challenges. Also got certified RSCC. So I think just some people might look at it as just some letters next to someone's name, but being able to look at that and look back and the time that I spent like putting in the work and in the school library and everything with the job, and it's definitely a good pat on the back to be able to see that and be like, hey, like, I earned this. And personally, being engaged, so got engaged and looking to get married November of 22. So
also proud of you again on this one too.
it's
Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
Probably like teacher. I'd probably be a teacher just because I like being able to help others, and I think teaching is a great skill. But also to be able to coach on the side, like do some type of, whether it's like teaching at a school, like coach baseball or whatnot. I think that's probably what I'd be doing.
Yeah, I wanted to be a math teacher and like coach baseball on the side when I was in high school. So I feel like it's just in us, right? Like we just want to help people in whatever it is, whether it's learning, trig or, learning how to squat a barbell, we're all just teaching, right?
Yep.
Kev, I appreciate your time, bro. It's really good to catch up with you, man. And like I said, I really am proud of, just seeing your progression from the FGCU days to where you're at now. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, where can we get more? Are you on social media, or is there a better place?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. You can go ahead and follow me at Varitek_Kevin8, the number 8. You can go ahead and shoot me a message on there, but I'll also leave my telephone number. It's 224-355-3233.
Kev, thanks again, man. I look forward to catching up soon, and I'm excited for your first year at an affiliate, man.
Definitely. Thank you for having me on.
All right, everybody, that concludes our episode with Kevin. I hope you enjoyed this one. I thought it was really cool to hear about his life in the DR and everything that he experienced down there, and, working with the young players and learning Spanish and everything that goes into, having the academy run smoothly and getting those guys to move up to the States. It was really cool to hear everything that he said. I've never been down, as I've mentioned, but everybody that has been there says if you get a chance to experience it, you really should. So as a coach, if you're listening and you get a chance to go down to the DR, I would strongly recommend, just from everything that I've heard from everybody else, that you really should try to take that opportunity. 3 things that I took from Kev in this episode: be personable, understand your purpose and why you want to be a coach, and try to make connections with sport coaches to better understand the game. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.